They introduced a hunter in class, but the human genius surprised everyone. Part 1. The station floated in the dark between two dying stars. It was old, enormous, and covered in lights that blinked like tired eyes. This was Valar 9, home to the Galactic Union Academy, the most respected school in all the known systems. Every species that mattered sent their best students here. Warriors, scientists, diplomats, engineers. They all came to Valar 9 to learn how to lead, how to fight, and how to survive. Sam Porter arrived on a transport shuttle with nothing but a single bag and a datapad full of books he had downloaded from Earth's old military archives. He was 24 years old, average height, average build, with brown hair that never quite stayed flat and calm gray eyes that watched everything and said very little. He was the only human enrolled at the academy this cycle. He knew what that meant. He knew how they would look at him, and they did look. And the Dravari were the first to notice him during orientation. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with thick blue-gray skin and arms like tree trunks. Their bones were dense enough to stop a bullet. One of them, a warrior named Gren, looked down at Sam as he passed and let out a low rumble from his chest. It was not a greeting. It was the sound a Dravari made when something was too small to be worth speaking to. The Chelik noticed him next. They were insectoid, slim, and with glossy black shells and antennae that constantly twitched as they processed chemical signals from the air around them. They moved in clusters of 3 or 4, always whispering through pheromone bursts that no other species could fully understand. One of them, a female analyst named Tilla, paused near Sam in the corridor and tilted her head. Her antenna flickered. Then she moved on without a word. The Moravi were kinder, but only because they were nervous about everything. They were small, fox-faced creatures with large ears and quick hands. Pex, a young Moravi engineer, bumped into Sam near the mess hall on the first day and apologized 6 times before Sam could tell him it was fine. Sam did not try to make friends. He did not try to prove himself. He went to his classes, sat in the back row, took notes, and spent his evenings in the Academy's archive, a massive digital library that contained tactical records, battle reports, and survival analyses from hundreds of wars across dozens of worlds. He read everything. He read about the Kelvani border campaigns. He read about the Chelik hive wars. He read about species that no longer existed because they had not been smart enough or fast enough or lucky enough to survive what the galaxy threw at them. He read about Earth, too, about how small it was, and about how the Galactic Union's first survey team had visited the planet and filed a report that described humans as a pre-spaceflight species with no natural defenses, limited sensory range, and a confusing tendency toward internal conflict. The report had recommended minimal engagement. Humans were not considered dangerous. They were not considered interesting. They were, in the language of the Union, noted and filed. That was 40 years ago. Now humanity had faster-than-light ships, or orbital stations, and a seat, barely, at the edge of galactic politics. They were still new, still small, still soft, in the eyes of species that had been crossing stars for millennia. Sam knew all of this. He carried it with him the way a person carries a scar they got when they were young, always there, always felt, never shown. His main class was Advanced Survival and Threat Assessment, taught by instructor Vorath. Vorath was Kelvani, tall, lean, and with pale silver skin and 4 arms that moved with the precision of surgical tools. He had fought in 3 major conflicts and had a reputation for being fair, brutal, and impossible to impress. He stood at the front of the classroom on the first day and looked over his students with 4 narrow eyes that missed nothing. "This course will teach you how to stay alive," Vorath said. His voice was deep and smooth, like stones rolling under water. Not how to fight, not how to win, how to survive. There is a difference, and most of you will not understand it until it is too late. He went on to explain the semester's structure: theoretical modules, field simulations, case studies, standard academy material. The students listened with half attention. Most of them had trained for years before arriving here and thought they already knew what survival meant. Then Vorath said something that made the room go quiet. This semester, the governing board has approved a special addition to the curriculum. You will not only study predators in theory, you will face one. The silence was thick. Sam could feel it pressing against his skin. Vorath explained. The academy would bring in a live apex predator, not a simulation, not a hologram, but a real creature from a real death world. The students would be placed in teams and sent into a controlled environment to track, evade, or subdue it. They would be graded on strategy, composure, and results. Someone in the front row asked what kind of predator. Vorath dimmed the lights. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It was six-legged, low to the ground, and moved with the fluid silence of smoke. Its skin shifted colors as it walked, blending into the jungle behind it until it was nearly invisible. Its mouth opened slowly, revealing rows of thin, serrated teeth that were not designed to kill quickly. They were designed to wound. To make prey bleed and run and weaken until the chase was over. This is a Vrethkin stalker, Vorath said, native to the jungle world Neth 4. It is classified as a Class 7 predator. It has near-perfect camouflage, paralytic venom in its forelimbs, and a predatory intelligence that some researchers believe approaches sentience. In the wild, nothing survives an encounter with a Vrethkin stalker. Nothing. The class was frozen. Gren's massive hands were clenched on his desk. Montilla's antenna had gone completely still. Pex looked like he might pass out. Sam sat in the back row. He had stopped writing. His eyes were fixed on the hologram, tracking the way the creature moved, the way its legs distributed weight, the way its head turned, always leading with the jaw, always keeping its eyes slightly above the line of its prey. He had seen movement like that before, not in alien archives, in old Earth documentaries, in footage of tigers moving through tall grass, though in clips of crocodiles sliding into river water without making a ripple. He knew this kind of hunter. Humanity had grown up surrounded by them. That evening, Claire Dawson found him in the archive. Claire was a human diplomatic attaché stationed on Valar 9, sharp, careful, and deeply aware of how fragile humanity's position in galactic politics still was. She was in her 30s, with red hair pulled back tight and a voice that could be warm or cold, depending on what she needed from the conversation. "You heard about the Vrethkin," she said. It was not a question. "I did," Sam said. "This was not in the original curriculum. Someone pushed for it. I am still finding out who, but I want you to be careful. There are people on the Union Council who think humans should not be here. This might be a test designed for you to fail." Sam looked at her. That the archive had on Vrethkin stalkers, biology, hunting patterns, recorded encounters, autopsy reports of their prey. He read for hours. He filled pages of his notebook with sketches and notes, distances, angles, reaction times, sensory thresholds, and somewhere in the middle of it all, he smiled. It was a quiet smile, small and private, the kind of smile a person makes when they see something familiar in a place where they expected to feel lost. He had spent his whole life on a world full of things that could kill him: spiders, sharks, bears, viruses, storms. Humans had not survived Earth by being the strongest or the fastest. They had survived by being the most stubborn, the most creative, and the most willing to sit in the dark and think until they found a way out. The galaxy thought he was soft. The galaxy thought he was small. The galaxy had no idea what it had invited into the classroom. They introduced a hunter in class, but the human genius surprised everyone. Part 2. The containment ship arrived at Valar 9 on a Tuesday. Sam watched it dock from the observation lounge on level 12. It was a small ship, black and armored, with biohazard markings on every surface and a containment field glowing faintly blue around its cargo hold. The two Kelvani handlers stepped off first, both of them carrying shock lances and wearing full environmental suits. They looked tired. One of them had a fresh scar running down the side of his neck. Behind them, the cargo platform lowered. On it was a cage made of reinforced alloy bars, each one as thick as Sam's arm. Inside the cage, something moved, slow, deliberate, and almost invisible against the dark metal floor. Sam pressed closer to the glass. The creature's skin was shifting. I'm trying to match the surface beneath it, but the cage was too small and too plain for the camouflage to work properly. So instead, the Vrethkin stalker just sat there, its 6 legs folded beneath its body, its wide, flat head turning slowly from side to side. It was the size of a large tiger. Its body was low and muscular, built for short bursts of explosive speed and long hours of patient stillness. Its legs ended in curved hooks that could grip rock, wood, bark, and flesh with equal ease. And its eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern on the front of its skull, were pale yellow and did not blink. They reflected the light of the station like tiny moons. It was beautiful, Sam thought, in the way that all perfect killers were beautiful, clean, efficient. Every part of it designed for one purpose. The Academy's training dome was the largest enclosed space on Valar 9. It was used for combat drills, environmental simulations, and survival exercises. For this test, the environmental team had spent 2 weeks transforming it into a near-perfect copy of the Vrethkin's home habitat on Neth 4. The result was 5 square kilometers of dense, bioluminescent jungle. The trees glowed faintly blue and green. Fog rolled along the ground in thick waves. The air was hot, humid, and carried the smell of rotting vegetation and something sweet that Sam could not identify. Instructor Vorath gathered the class outside the dome's main entrance and explained the rules. Teams of 4 would enter the dome in rotating shifts. Each team would have 90 minutes inside. Their objective was to locate the Vrethkin, assess its behavior, and either evade it for the full duration or find a way to subdue it using the equipment provided. Each student would carry a basic field kit containing a short-range sensor pad, a stun baton, a signal flare, and an emergency beacon. If anyone activated their beacon, it would in its natural environment. It would in its natural environment. It will hunt. It will stalk. It will attack if it finds you. The stun batons can slow it down, but they will not stop it unless applied directly to the nerve cluster at the base of its skull. A target roughly the size of your fist. I located on a creature that can turn invisible and move faster than most of you can react. He paused and looked across the class. Any questions? No one spoke. The teams were assigned. Sam looked at the list and found his name grouped with Gren, Tilla, and Pex. He studied the 3 names and thought about what he knew about each of them. Gren was strong, aggressive, and proud. And he would want to fight the Vrethkin head-on because that was what Dravari warriors did. They met threats with force and considered retreat a failure. Tilla was analytical and precise. She would want data before making any decision, which meant she would want to scan, measure, and observe before acting. Pex was terrified, but brilliant with machines. He could take apart and rebuild almost anything, but his hands would shake if the pressure got too high. None of them trusted Sam. None of them expected anything from him. That was fine. He could work with that. The first 3 teams entered the dome over the next several hours. Sam's team was scheduled last. They waited in the observation room, watching the feeds from cameras mounted throughout the jungle. What they saw was not encouraging. Team 1 lasted 11 minutes. They moved in a tight formation, sensor pads active, stun batons ready. The Vrethkin let them walk right past it. They never saw it. It dropped from a tree branch behind the rear member of the group and hit him so fast that his emergency beacon activated on impact. The rest of the team panicked. 2 more beacons fired within seconds. The last member, a Dravari female, tried to stand and fight. She lasted another 30 seconds before the Vrethkin circled behind her and knocked her flat. Team 2 tried a different approach. They spread out, covering more ground, using their sensor pads to sweep the area. The Vrethkin simply avoided the sensor range. It moved around them like water flowing around stones. When one of them wandered too far from the group, it struck. Another beacon. Then another. The remaining 2 huddled together and waited out the clock, but Vorath marked them as failures for refusing to engage. Team 3 was the most aggressive. They went in loud and fast, trying to flush the Vrethkin out with signal flares and noise. The creature responded by going completely still. It vanished into the jungle so thoroughly that the team spent 40 minutes searching for it without finding a trace. Then, when they finally relaxed and lowered their guard, it came from below. Out of a muddy depression no one had thought to check. 3 beacons in 12 seconds. Sam watched all of this in silence. He did not watch the students. He watched the Vrethkin. He watched how it chose its moment. He watched how it reacted to the sensor pads, a slight twitch of its head every time one pinged nearby. He watched how it used the fog, the trees, the terrain. He watched how it always moved toward the weakest member of a group, never the strongest. It was not just hunting, it was reading them. Gren was pacing behind Sam, his massive feet shaking the floor with each step. "When we go in, I will take point," he said. "I will draw its attention. The rest of you stay behind me." "That will not work," Sam said without looking away from the screen. Gren stopped pacing. "What did you say?" Sam turned to face him. He did not raise his voice. He did not stand up. He just looked at Gren with those calm gray eyes and said, "Every team that has gone in so far has used the standard approach. Move in, scan, react. The Vrethkin has beaten every one of them in minutes. It is smarter than the equipment we were given. Now, if we go in doing the same thing, we will get the same result." Gren's jaw tightened. "Then what do you suggest, human?" Sam looked at Tilla. "Can you produce specific pheromone blends on demand? Complex ones, not just communication signals?" Tilla's antenna twitched. "I can. Why?" Sam looked at Pex. "If I gave you a stun baton and a sensor pad, could you rewire them into something else? A remote trigger, maybe. Something that gives off a signal on command." Pex blinked his large eyes. Yes, probably, but what would you want it to signal?" Sam turned back to the screen. The Vrethkin was on camera 4, sitting perfectly still in the crook of a tree, its skin matching the bark so well that it was nearly invisible. Only its eyes gave it away, 4 pale spots in the dark. "It hunts by tracking 3 things," Sam said. "Movement, heat, and electronic signals. Every team has walked in broadcasting all 3. We are going to walk in broadcasting none." Gren let out a slow breath. "You are insane." "Maybe," Sam said. "But I have spent my whole life studying things like that." He pointed at the screen. "On my world, we had hundreds of them. Different shapes, different sizes, same instinct, and we beat every single one." Tilla leaned forward. Her pheromone output shifted. Sam could not smell it, but he saw her antenna angle toward him in a way that the Chelik used to indicate serious attention. "Hi, what are you?" she asked. Sam stood up and picked up his field kit. "I am a human," he said. "And where I come from, we were never at the top of the food chain. We just refused to stay at the bottom." The dome entrance opened. Hot, wet air rolled out like the breath of something alive. The jungle glowed blue-green in the fog. Somewhere inside, the Vrethkin was waiting. Sam stepped through the door first. His team followed. None of them knew exactly what was about to happen. But for the first time, they were willing to listen. They introduced a hunter in class, but the human genius surprised everyone. Part 3. The moment they stepped inside, the dome swallowed them. The air was thick and warm and tasted like wet soil. The bioluminescent trees rose high above them, their trunks wide and covered in soft glowing moss that pulsed faintly with a rhythm that almost looked like breathing. The fog clung to the ground and reached up to their knees. Every sound was muffled. Every shadow moved. Sam stopped the team 10 steps past the entrance. "Turn off your sensor pads," he said. Gren looked at him like he had asked them to jump into a fire. "The sensor pads are the only way to detect the creature. The sensor pads are the reason every team has been found within minutes," Sam said. He kept his voice low and steady. "Every time the pad sends out a ping, it creates a small electromagnetic pulse. The Vrethkin can feel that. I watched it on the cameras. Every time a team activated their sensors, the creature turned its head toward the signal before the scan even completed. We are handing it our location on a plate." Tilla's antenna bent forward. She was processing what Sam said. After a moment, she reached to her belt and powered down her sensor pad. "He is correct," she said quietly. "I observed the same reaction on the feed. The creature was tracking the pings, not the people." Gren hesitated, his huge hand wrapped around the sensor unit. And then he turned it off with a grunt. Pex was already holding his out to Sam. "What do you want me to do with it?" Sam took the sensor pad and the stun baton from Pex's kit. He crouched on the jungle floor and laid both pieces of equipment on a flat rock. "I need you to combine these into a remote decoy. Something that can sit in one place and, when triggered, send out a burst that mimics a living biosignal, heartbeat, heat, movement. Can you do that?" Pex stared at the components. His ears twitched. His fingers were already moving, turning the stun baton over, finding the power cell, tracing the circuit paths with his sharp little claws. "Yes," he said. "Give me 10 minutes. "You have 5, Sam said. While Pex worked, Sam turned to Tilla. "Your pheromones? How complex can you make them?" "Very," Tilla said. "Chelic chemical communication uses over 300 distinct molecular compounds. I can produce blends that convey emotions, directions, warnings, or even abstract concepts." "Can you produce something that does not convey anything? Something that just creates chemical noise, a cloud of mixed signals that would confuse an animal relying on scent to track prey?" Tilla was still for a moment. Then her antenna rose slowly. "That is a creative misuse of my biology," she said. "I have never been asked to produce nonsense before." "Will it work?" "It should. The Vrethkin's olfactory system is highly sensitive. If I flood the area with contradictory chemical signals, it will not be able to isolate our scent from the background." "Good. Start now. Keep it going the entire time we are in here." Tilla closed her eyes. A faint mist began to rise from the glands along her neck and shoulders, invisible to the eye but thick in the air. Sam could not smell it, but he noticed that the ambient scent of the jungle around them began to shift, becoming muddled and strange, and as if the forest itself had forgotten what it was supposed to smell like. Sam turned to Gren last. The Dravari warrior was standing with his arms crossed, watching all of this with an expression caught between skepticism and grudging curiosity. "I need you to do the hardest thing a warrior can do," Sam said. "And what is that?" "Nothing." Gren's eyes narrowed. Sam explained. Dravari had a biological ability that most species did not fully appreciate. When they entered a rest state, and their metabolism dropped to almost nothing, their body temperature fell, their heartbeat slowed to a crawl. In the wild, Dravari used this ability to conserve energy during long hunts on their frozen homeworld. Here, it would make Gren nearly invisible to a heat-tracking predator. "I need you to find a position near that rock formation to the east," Sam said, pointing into the fog. "Get there, go still, and lower your metabolism. Do not move. Do not react. Do not breathe hard. And no matter what you hear, wait for my signal." "And what will you be doing?" Gren asked. "I will be the bait." The word hung in the air. Pex looked up from his work with wide eyes. Tilla's antenna froze. Even Gren was silent. "The Vrethkin is a stalker," Sam said. "It prefers wounded, isolated prey. It will not attack a group. It will not attack something it cannot read. So we give it what it wants. A single, easy target moving alone through the jungle. Me. It will follow me. It will watch me. And when it commits to the attack, we close the trap." Up in the observation room, the cameras tracked Sam's team as they split apart. The other students watched in confusion. The human was breaking every rule of group survival, separating, discarding equipment, sending the strongest fighter to hide and doing nothing. Claire Dawson stood at the railing, her face tight, her fingers white against the metal. Vorath stood beside her, his forearms folded, and his expression unreadable. "He is going to get killed," someone in the observation room muttered. Vorath said nothing. He just watched. Inside the dome, Sam moved alone through the jungle. He walked slowly. He breathed evenly. He kept his hands visible and his posture relaxed. He was doing everything wrong by galactic survival standards. No weapon drawn, no scanner active, no defensive stance. But by Earth standards, by the standards of a species that had spent 100,000 years learning how to survive in a world that wanted to eat them, he was doing everything right. He was not hiding. He was reading. He listened to the jungle, the ambient hum of the bioluminescent plants, the drip of moisture from the canopy, the faint rustle of artificial wind moving through the fog. He cataloged every sound and filed it away so that when something broke the pattern, he would know. He watched the light. And the way the moss glowed on the tree trunks, the way certain patches seemed dimmer than they should be, as if something was standing between the light source and his eye, something that was not quite part of the tree. He felt the air. On Earth, hunters had learned to feel the pressure change when a large animal moved nearby, the slight displacement of air that came before a charge. The dome's environmental system created a constant low breeze, but Sam had been walking long enough to know its rhythm. If that rhythm broke, something was close. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The observation room grew restless. People whispered that the Vrethkin had lost interest, that Sam's strategy was too passive, that nothing was happening. Sam knew better. Something had been following him for the last 10 minutes. He could not see it. He could not hear it. But the air on the back of his neck had changed. It was slightly warmer, and slightly thicker, the way air gets when it passes over another living body before reaching your skin. The Vrethkin was right behind him. Sam did not run. He did not turn around. He adjusted his path slightly, angling toward the position where Pex had planted the decoy 20 meters to the north. He slowed his steps. He let his shoulders drop, making himself look tired, making himself look like easy prey. The creature took the invitation. It came from the left, not behind, as Sam expected, but from a flanking angle that showed just how intelligent it was. The camouflage dropped for a fraction of a second as it lunged, and in that sliver of time, Sam saw it clearly. 6 legs, pale eyes, a mouth already open. He threw himself to the right and rolled. The Vrethkin's claws tore through the air where his chest had been. Sam hit the ground, came up on one knee, and slammed his palm against the remote trigger Pex had given him. The decoy fired. 20 meters away, like a burst of electromagnetic energy and false biosignals erupted from the device Pex had built. To the Vrethkin, it sounded and felt like a second prey animal, one that was louder, warmer, and easier to find than the small human who had just dodged its strike. The creature hesitated. Its head swung toward the decoy. Its camouflage flickered as its brain processed two targets at once. That hesitation was everything. Sam whistled, a sharp, short sound that cut through the fog. A gren exploded from stillness. 3 meters of Dravari muscle launched forward, not toward the Vrethkin, but beside it, driving it sideways, herding it with sheer mass toward the narrow ravine where Tilla waited. The creature snarled and tried to pivot, but Gren was not fighting it. He was guiding it, using his body like a wall, exactly as Sam had told him. The Vrethkin hit the ravine at full speed. Tilla was ready. She released everything she had. A concentrated blast of chemical confusion so thick that even Sam, 30 meters away, felt his eyes water. The Vrethkin's camouflage went wild, its skin flashing through colors like a broken screen. It stumbled, its legs crossing, its senses overwhelmed. Pex was shaking so hard he could barely stand. But he was there, at the edge of the ravine, holding the second rewired stun baton. And he pressed the trigger against the base of the creature's skull, right where Sam had told him the nerve cluster was. The Vrethkin dropped. Its legs folded, its camouflage faded to a dull gray, its breathing slowed. It was alive, unharmed, and completely subdued. The jungle was quiet. The fog drifted. The bioluminescent trees pulsed their soft blue light. In the observation room, 40 students and 1 instructor stared at the screen in silence. Then someone started to clap. And then another. And then the whole room. Vorath did not clap. He just stood there, his 4 eyes fixed on the small human standing in the fog below, chest heaving, hands steady, and a look on his face that was not pride and not relief. It was the look of someone who had done this before. Not here. Not in a dome. But somewhere older, somewhere darker, on a little blue world where the things in the shadows had teeth, and the soft, slow, clawless creatures had learned to be more frightening than any of them. They introduced a hunter in class. But the human genius surprised everyone. Part 4. The news spread through the academy in hours. By the time Sam's team had showered and changed out of their sweat-soaked field gear, every student on Velar 9 knew what had happened inside the dome. A human, the only human in the entire school, the quiet one who sat in the back row and never spoke unless spoken to, had led a team to subdue a Vrethkin stalker. Not outrun it, not survive it, subdued it, in under 40 minutes, with improvised equipment, without a single injury. No team in the history of the academy had ever done that. The reactions were mixed. Some students were impressed, others were suspicious. A group of Dravari seniors cornered Gren in the barracks and demanded to know why he had taken orders from a human. Gren, and who that morning would have asked the same question, looked at them for a long time and said, "Because he was right." He did not explain further. He did not need to. Tilla returned to her Chelik cluster and released a detailed pheromone account of the entire exercise. Among the Chelik, information was shared openly and without ego. Every member of the cluster experienced Tilla's memory as if it were their own. When the account reached the moment Sam had asked her to produce chemical noise, the cluster went silent. A Chelik using her pheromones to create confusion rather than communication was like a singer being asked to scream. It was not done, but it had worked. The cluster spent the rest of the evening in deep discussion about the implications. Pex simply followed Sam to the mess hall and sat across from him with a tray of food and a head full of questions. "How did you know about the nerve cluster?" he asked. "It is not in any of the standard references." I checked. "It is in the autopsy reports," Sam said. 3 Vrethkin were killed by research teams on Neth 4 over the last 50 years. In every case, the killing blow hit the same spot, base of the skull, just behind the jaw hinge. The researchers noted it in passing, but nobody flagged it as a tactical weakness. I just read the footnotes. Pex stared at him. You read footnotes. I read everything. The summons from Vorath came the next morning. Sam walked to the instructor's office on the upper level of the academy, a sparse room with wide windows that looked out over the station's central atrium. Vorath was standing with his back to the door, all four hands clasped behind him, watching a transport ship drift past the viewport. "Sit," Vorath said without turning. Sam sat. Vorath turned slowly. His four eyes studied Sam the way they had studied the Vrethkin on the observation feed, with careful, patient attention. "Tell me how you did it," he said. "Not the summary, not the version you will tell your classmates. Tell me the real version, from the beginning." Sam told him. He started with the archives, how he had spent weeks before the exercise reading everything the Academy had on Vrethkin biology, behavior, and recorded encounters. He explained how he had cross-referenced the Vrethkin's hunting patterns with predators from Earth. The way it used camouflage was similar to cuttlefish and octopi. The way it stalked from behind and flanked at the last moment was identical to the hunting behavior of leopards. The way it targeted the weakest member of a group matched the strategy of wolves and African wild dogs. The Vrethkin was terrifying to the galaxy because the galaxy had never seen anything like it. Sam had grown up on a planet where things like it were everywhere. He explained how he had identified the flaws in the standard equipment, how the sensor pads were active scanners that broadcast the team's position, how the stun batons leaked a detectable energy signature, how every piece of gear the Academy provided was designed for species that relied on technology rather than instinct. He explained how he had assessed his team. Lower his metabolism made him the perfect ambush element. Tilla's pheromone complexity made her the perfect sensory disruptor. Pex's engineering skill made him the perfect toolmaker. And Sam's own role, the bait, was the one no one else could play, because it required something none of the alien species had been trained to do. "And what is that?" Vorath asked. "Thinking like prey," Sam said. "Understanding what the predator wants to see, moving the way it expects you to move, and then, at the last moment, not being where it thinks you are." Vorath was quiet. He walked to his desk and sat down across from Sam. When he spoke again, his voice was different, lower, more personal, as if the instructor mask had slipped just slightly. The Vrethkin was not part of my original curriculum," he said. Sam waited. "It was introduced at the request of Ambassador Dreth of the Kelvani Dominion. He is a senior member of the Union Council and a vocal critic of human participation in galactic institutions. He considers your species too young, too fragile, and too unstable to hold a seat at any table that matters. When your enrollment was approved, he contacted the Academy's governing board and recommended an accelerated threat assessment exercise. His stated reason was academic rigor. His actual reason was to demonstrate that humans cannot compete with established species in high-stress survival scenarios." Sam absorbed this. His face did not change. "He wanted me to fail." "He wanted you to break," Vorath said. "He wanted you to hit your beacon in the first 5 minutes, just like the others. He wanted footage of the only human at the Academy running from a predator, so he could take it to the Council and argue that humanity does not belong here." Sam looked at Vorath for a long moment. Then he asked, "Did it work?" Vorath leaned back in his chair, and then, for the first time in the entire semester, he laughed. It was a short sound, rough and surprised, as if it had escaped from somewhere he did not usually let things escape from. "No," he said. It did not work. The political fallout was swift and loud. Claire Dawson filed a formal complaint with the Union Council within hours of learning about Ambassador Dreth's involvement. She had spent enough time in galactic diplomacy to know that an accusation needed evidence. So she had spent the previous weeks quietly gathering communication logs, board meeting minutes, and testimony from Academy staff who had been pressured to approve the Vrethkin exercise outside of normal channels. That the complaint did not name Sam. It did not need to. It framed the issue as a matter of institutional integrity, a senior ambassador using his influence to manipulate a school curriculum for political purposes. The council could not ignore it without looking complicit. Dreth denied everything, of course, and he issued a statement calling the complaint a misunderstanding of academic tradition and describing the Vrethkin exercise as a valuable learning opportunity for all species. But the damage was done. The story was out, and the story was simple. Someone had tried to break the human, and the human had broken the test instead. Back at the academy, something was changing. It was small at first, a nod from a Dravari in the corridor, and a Chelik cluster parting to let Sam pass with their antenna raised in acknowledgement, a Miravi engineer asking Sam for advice on a project that had nothing to do with survival training. The shift was not dramatic. It was not a sudden wave of admiration. It was quieter than that. It was the slow, careful recognition that the human in the back row was not what they had assumed. Gren started sitting next to Sam in class. He did not ask permission. He simply moved his massive frame into the seat beside Sam one morning and said, "You think differently than any species I have met. It is uncomfortable. I think I need more of it." Sam nodded and passed him a data pad with notes from the last lecture. Gren stared at it, then at Sam, and let out a rumble that Sam had learned to recognize as the Dravari equivalent of a grudging smile. Tilla sent Sam a pheromone packet, a sealed capsule containing a specific chemical blend that, when opened, she would convey a message directly to the olfactory system. Sam could not read it the way a Chelik could, but Tilla translated it for him. It meant deep respect for an unexpected teacher. Among the Chelik, it was one of the highest compliments an individual could receive. Pex became Sam's shadow. He appeared at Sam's table during meals, followed him to the archives in the evenings, and asked an endless stream of questions about human engineering, human history, and human improvisation. "Ah, you are telling me," Pex said one. "You are telling me," Pex said one evening, his ears flat with disbelief, "that your species built spacecraft held together with sticky fabric." "Not the whole spacecraft," Sam said. "Just the parts that mattered." Pex did not know if Sam was joking. Sam did not clarify. The semester continued. New exercises came and went. Sam's team, unofficial now, he held together not by assignment but by choice, performed well in every one. Not because Sam was the strongest or the fastest, not because he had some secret ability that the other species lacked, but because he approached every problem as if his life depended on it. And then he found a way to make the problem smaller. He took apart threats the way Pex took apart machines, piece by piece, until he understood how they worked, and then he rebuilt the situation in his favor. A word spread beyond the academy. Other institutions in the Union began to request Sam's exercise footage for their own training programs. Military strategists from 3 different species published papers analyzing his approach to the Vrethkin encounter. A Chelik academic wrote a treatise titled Persistence, Predation, and Cognitive Flexibility, the Human Survival Model, which became the most downloaded paper in the Union's scientific archive that quarter. Sam did not read any of it. He was too busy studying for the next exam. But Claire Dawson read all of it. And late one evening, she sat in her quarters with a glass of something strong and a smile on her face, because she knew that what had started in a jungle dome on a training station was going to ripple outward in ways that none of them, not Sam, not Vorath, not even Ambassador Dreth, could fully predict. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the galactic record. The galaxy was beginning to pay attention. And Claire knew, from long experience, that once the galaxy started paying attention to humans, it never quite looked away. They introduced a hunter in class, but the human genius surprised everyone. Part 5. The semester ended on the same day the first snow of Valar 9's artificial winter cycle began to fall through the station's atmospheric vents. Tiny white flakes drifted down through the central atrium, dissolving before they touched the floor. But it was a tradition the station's original builders had programmed centuries ago, a reminder that even in the cold dark between stars, some things could still feel like home. Sam stood near the viewport on level 12 and watched the flakes fall. He was wearing his academy uniform, plain gray, no rank insignia, no medals, no decorations. He had earned the highest marks in advanced survival and threat assessment, the second highest in tactical theory, and the third highest in xenobiology. And he had also earned something that no grade could measure, a reputation that had traveled far beyond the walls of the academy. He was not thinking about any of that. He was thinking about snow, about how it used to fall on the small town in Colorado where he grew up, and how his father used to stand on the porch and watch it pile up on the fence posts, and how quiet the world became when the snow was deep enough to swallow every sound. He missed home. He always would. And with tiered seating that curved upward, like the inside of a shell. Every student in the graduating class was present, over 200 of them, representing 18 different species. The Dravari filled the upper rows, their massive bodies making the seats creak. The Chellic sat in tight clusters, and their antennae moving in synchronized waves. The Moravi were scattered throughout, small and bright-eyed, vibrating with nervous energy. And in the middle of it all, one human sat between a Dravari warrior, a Chellic analyst, and a Moravi engineer, and none of them thought it was strange anymore. Instructor Vorath walked to the podium at the center of the room. He moved slowly, his forearms folded behind his back, his silver skin catching the light. And he looked older than he had at the start of the semester. Not tired, just heavier, as if the weight of what he had seen and learned over the past months had settled into his bones. He did not begin with the usual formalities. He did not thank the board or acknowledge the administrators or praise the class for their hard work. Instead, he told a story. 43 years ago, Vorath said, the Galactic Union sent a survey team to a small planet in the outer arm of the Orion Spur. The planet was unremarkable by galactic standards, a mid-size rocky world with one large moon, a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, and a great deal of water. The survey team expected to find simple life, perhaps some microbial colonies, perhaps some plant analogs, nothing that would require a second visit. He paused. The hall was silent. What they found instead was a species that had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no wings, no sonar, no bioluminescence, no camouflage, no telepathy, and no electromagnetic sensitivity. By every metric the Union used to assess a species' survival capability, this species scored near the bottom. Their skin was thin. Their bones were brittle compared to a Dravari's. Their senses were dull compared to a Chellic's. Their reflexes were slow compared to a Moravi's. The survey team logged the species as a minor curiosity and recommended no further contact. Vorath looked out across the room. And then, he said, they looked more closely. They found cities, not burrows or nests or hive structures. Cities, built from stone and metal and glass, covering entire landscapes. They found roads that stretched across continents. They found bridges over rivers and tunnels through mountains. They found ships on water and aircraft in the sky and satellites in orbit. They found machines that could split atoms. They found weapons that could level mountains. But they found communication networks that circled the entire planet, carrying more information in a single day than most species produce in a century. They found all of this built by a species that, by every biological measure, should not have survived its own childhood. The hall was absolutely still. 200 students from 18 species sat in silence, listening to a Kelvani instructor describe something that most of them had never bothered to think about. The survey team filed a revised report, Vorath continued. It was classified immediately. The new assessment did not describe humans as a minor curiosity. The new assessment used a phrase that had never appeared in a Union species evaluation before. It read, Unpredictable adaptive threat. Observe with caution. Sam felt Gren shift beside him. The Dravari's hand came down briefly on Sam's shoulder, a gesture that, for a species built for war, carried more weight than most words. So Vorath stepped away from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage, closer to the students. His voice dropped, becoming less formal, more personal. This semester, the Academy introduced a hunter into the classroom, a Vrethkin stalker, one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. We expected the exercise to test your skills, your training, and your composure under pressure. And for most of you, it did. You responded within the parameters of your species training. Warriors fought, analysts analyzed, engineers built. Each of you did what you were taught to do. He paused. One student did none of those things. Every eye in the room turned toward Sam. He did not move. He did not look down. He sat with his hands on his knees and his gray eyes forward, steady and calm. Sam Porter did not fight the Vrethkin. He did not run from it. He did not try to overpower it or outsmart it within the existing rules of engagement. Instead, he did something that no tactical manual in the Union's archive describes. He studied the hunter. He learned how it thought. He took it apart in his mind before he ever set foot in the dome. And then he used everything around him, his team, the terrain, the equipment, even the creature's own instincts, to change the nature of the encounter entirely. Vorath looked directly at Sam. He did not respond like prey. He did not respond like a predator. He responded like a human. And I confess to you all, after 300 years of teaching, I had never seen anything quite like it. The room was so quiet that Sam could hear the hum of the station's power grid through the floor beneath his feet. There are many species in this galaxy, Vorath said. Species that are stronger, faster, tougher, and more naturally gifted than humans in every measurable way. But humans have something that none of us evolved. They have the ability to look at something that should terrify them, something bigger, deadlier, and more powerful than they are, and see not a threat, but a problem, a puzzle, a challenge to be taken apart and understood and solved. They come from a world that tried to kill them every day for 100,000 years. And instead of adapting to fit their environment, they adapted their environment to fit them. They did not grow claws. They made knives. And they did not grow armor. They built walls. They did not grow wings. They built aircraft. Every limitation their biology gave them, they answered not with evolution, but with invention. Not with patience, but with sheer, stubborn, relentless refusal to accept the rules as they were written. Vorath straightened. His voice rose, filling the hall. Let the record show. We brought a hunter into this classroom. It was meant to test you. It was meant to challenge you. For one student, it was meant to break him. It did none of those things, because the human was not the prey. He paused one final time. The human was never the prey. The hall erupted, not in applause, in something deeper. A sound that was part recognition, part respect, and part the quiet, unsettling realization that the galaxy was bigger and stranger than any of them had understood before today. Gren stood up. Tilla's antenna rose to their highest position. Apex was grinning so wide that his sharp little teeth caught the light. Around them, 200 students from 18 species stood as well, and the sound they made together was like thunder rolling through a canyon. Sam stood with them. He did not raise his fist. He did not shout. He just stood there, a young man from a small blue planet, surrounded by warriors and analysts and engineers from across the galaxy, and felt, for the first time since arriving on Valar 9, that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. After the ceremony, the corridors of the academy were loud with conversation and laughter, and the strange, beautiful noise of a dozen species celebrating together. Sam slipped away from the crowd and walked to the viewport on level 12. Claire Dawson was waiting for him. The orders from Earth's delegation, she said. New orders from Earth's delegation, she said, holding out the datapad. Sam took it and read. The message was short. Humanity had been offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Union's Strategic Defense Council, the first new species admitted in over a century. Earth's delegation wanted Sam to serve as their first military liaison to the council. He read it again. Then he looked up at Claire. Tell them we accept, he said. And tell them to send more students. The galaxy has a lot to learn about us. Claire nodded. She turned to leave, then stopped. Sam? Yeah? Your father called the embassy this morning. He said to tell you that it snowed in Colorado last night. 6 inches. Sam laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and sudden and full of something that the Chelik would have needed a new pheromone to describe. Tell him I saw some snow up here too, Sam said. Claire left. Sam turned back to the viewport. Outside, the stars stretched in every direction, endless, ancient, and indifferent. Somewhere among them, a small blue planet turned in the light of a single yellow sun. A planet full of soft-skinned, clawless, fragile creatures who had looked up at those same stars for 100,000 years and said with every generation, with every invention, for a long time. Then he picked up his, for a long time. Then he picked up his bag, straightened his uniform, and walked toward whatever came next. The galaxy was vast. The galaxy was old. The galaxy was full of wonders and terrors that humanity had barely begun to understand. But the galaxy had made a mistake. It had looked at the quiet student in the back row, the soft creature from the small blue world, and it had underestimated him. It had underestimated all of them. It would not make that mistake again.